Girl, me too. You're in the middle of a battle. That man's beautiful. I understand. Hey guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back to another video here on my channel. I hope you guys are doing well. We are jumping right back in to our Throne of Glass recaps today. I'm very excited. For this episode, we're talking about part 1 of Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. I am reading them. I am reviewing them for you like the Tandem Read, okay? So we're going to be talking about them combined. For those of you that don't know, Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn are 2 books in the Throne of Glass series that happen at the same time. So a lot of people recommend reading them together. It's intimidating. I'll put a little thing up on the screen of the breakdown of how to do it, okay? It's intimidating. It is so worth it. Hear me when I say this. Tower of Dawn is so boring. It's so boring, especially if you don't like Kale, okay? That's his book. This is a Kale book, Tower of Dawn. If you don't like him, nightmare. Nightmare, nightmare, nightmare. So you need to do both, okay? Because Empire of Storms will keep you going. And you'll be like, if I can just get through this chapter, I'll get back to what these guys are doing. And you'll be fine, okay? I loved it. And I will never read the books separately. They got to be read together. They're one book, in my opinion. So that's how we're going to talk about them. And this is going to be part 1. And then next week, I'll have part 2 out for you guys. And then we're going to do 2-parters for Kingdom of Ash. So unfortunately, I'm not going to have these fully done before we get to Crescent City. But I will say that all in all, other than the end of the book and how it ends and the spoilers there, you know kind of the details that you need to know so far, because a lot of it happens in the beginning. It's like the lore of Throne of Glass is what I think is going to be connected to Crescent City and ACOTAR, not so much the plot, if that makes sense. I think there's going to be some things that overlap that we haven't gotten to yet, but we're getting there. We're getting there. So hang with me, but I'm sorry. It's not gonna happen before Crescent City 3. I flew too close to the sun, and these 1,000-pagers, they got me. So before we dive in, just know in your hearts, if we're talking about Aelin or Adian or Lysandra or Dorian or Rowan, we are talking about Empire of Storms. If we're talking about Kale and Nesrin and their people, we're talking about Tower of Dawn. Let's go! Let's freaking do it! Empire of Storms opens up with a flashback from the original war. We've got Elena and Gavin. They're in the war camp. They're cornered. Erewhon has shown up. He's evil. Everything is bad. Nightmare all around. She's come to the realization that there's only one thing left that they can do. It will sacrifice both of them and all of their friends and family, but it will win the war. And they decide to do it. Then we go to our sweet girl, Elodie. She is making her way to the north, but remember, she has a badly damaged ankle-foot situation, so she's struggling through the woods, and she's also a target because it's very obvious that she's the missing girl from Marath with a limp. There's no way for her to hide it. Lorcan is watching her. He's been tracking her the whole time. He knows she's a human, but he's also why does she smell like a Valg, though? Because she has the word key from Kaltain, so he can smell that on her, and he's like, something's fishy about this human girl, and he decides to just watch her until he figures it out. Aelin, Adian, and Lysandra are on their way to finally meet with the Lords of Terrasen, but they are old, cranky white men, okay? Murtaugh, the nice one, Rin's grandpa, he's also one. The others? Trash men, okay? They're making it really difficult. They're making Aelin jump through hoops, even though she is the queen. So Adian and Rowan are really annoyed that the lords are treating her this way, and she's like, whatever, they don't know me, I'm 19, I need to prove myself, it's not a big deal, let's just handle it, we'll go meet where they want to meet. Also, for you romance humans, Aelin and Rowan have not banged yet. Okay, they keep making out whenever they can, but they're traveling with their friends and they're on the road. And Rowan's like, we're not having sex against a tree. We're not having sex in a little tent. I'm getting a bed and then I will bed you. It's all they're thinking about, though. When I tell you all they want to do is save the world and bang, I'm not exaggerating. That's all they're thinking about. Aelin has also come to terms with the fact that she's in love with him, but she hasn't told him yet. There's also this cute, silly moment between Adian and Aelin where they talk about his hair getting long, and she's like, look, if you're not gonna cut it, we should at least start wearing matching outfits because people already think we look alike. It's getting ridiculous. It's so cute. Our girl Manon, her story happens in Empire of Storms too, okay? Just to keep you on your toes. She's having yet another meeting with Vernon and Duke Parrington. Erewhon has taken over Duke Parrington's body now, so he's like himself, and he's this beautiful, I think, golden-haired man. He also has golden eyes, which are like the mark of the Vow King, which is what Manon has. She gets given orders to go to Rifthold, attack the city, just wreak havoc and bring down the glass wall, and then if Dorian lives, bring him back to Morath. Ugh, you're not ready for this, but you need to be. Prepare yourselves. You're gonna be really angry. Aelin finally meets with the Terrasen Lords. As I said, they're entitled old white men, okay? The worst of the worst, except for Murtaugh. He's a sweetheart. The most crappy of all of them is Lord Darrow. He is just like obnoxiously mean, almost for fun. He says that they signed a document stating that she's not queen, she's just a princess, and if she acts and like calls herself queen, then it's an act of war and they'll retaliate against her. He also doesn't want to accept Lysandra as a lady because of her past as a courtesan, and I'm like, that's all I needed to know about you right there, sir. Even if you were nice to Aelin, I would hate you for this alone. He implies that Aelin should probably break up with Rowan, since Rowan doesn't have any resources anymore because he got like kicked out of Windland. And he says if she really cares about her kingdom, she would try to make a more beneficial match for them and marry somebody else from like another continent that's royal with resources. Rowan and Adian are just ready to like roast these idiots alive. But Aelin makes a promise to leave and gather allies. If that's what they want, that's what she'll get. They find out in this situation that Dorian is about to be attacked in Rifthold. Rowan's the only one that could make it there in time and possibly get him out, so he takes off to go get him. They leave Evangeline with Lord Darrow, and Aelin tells her it's because like she needs her to look after Fleetfoot, but also it's because she's a child. But she says to Evangeline, win me back my kingdom, because she knows that Lysandra has trained Evangeline to be like a spy, basically. And she's like, infiltrate these old men and make them love us. Oh, she also makes like a blood vow promise. Remember when she cut her palm and like prayed over Nehemiah's grave? She does that again to Lord Darrow. She says that no matter what he does against her, when he calls for help, she will always come to his aid. Aelin, Adian, and Lysandra head off to Skulls Bay to go try to meet Captain Rolfe and get some allies. We're going over to Tower of Dawn now. Buckle up, we got a chapter of world building. So Chaol and Nesserin got sent on a boat by Dorian over to the southern continent to try to get allies, but also because there's that special healing school. Remember the one that Yrene wanted to go to when we talked about her in Assassin's Blade? That school is there, and they're hopeful that he will be able to be healed and he'll be able to walk again. The city they go to is called the God City, which is really cool. This concept is neat. Basically, the people in this city are from all over, but also just from the southern continent, and they worship every single god from every single pantheon in the like world. Like in the Throne of Glass universe, this city has like temples to every single god. There's also an abundance of magic and history and training, because over here magic never got taken away. So they've just been growing and growing and growing while the northern continent was like suffering under the king. Chaol is really struggling with the fact that he's in a wheelchair. We get a lot of him like internally like thinking badly about himself. He feels really guilty about what happened to his guards and the fact that like he left them and then they died because they were helping him. A lot of this book is just Chaol working through his trauma. And I personally don't love the way SJM talks about situations like this, like any kind of trauma with her. She just has her own opinions on it, and I don't think they always translate well to page, and Chaol is no different. Like some of it I get, and I'm like, that sounds nice, that's cool, and then some of it I'm like, ooh. They arrive at the stunning royal palace, okay? They meet the ruler of this land. His name is Uris. He's also got 6 children, and we get told as some lore that the kids don't know who the heir is, and it's not based off of like birth. So like the oldest son is not necessarily the heir. It's just one of the 6 of them, okay? What's gonna happen is he'll pick an heir later on as he's like close to death, and then that heir will get to decide like, okay, am I killing my siblings? Are they gonna fight me for it? It's a whole thing over there. So there's not a lot of love in this family. Also, Nesserin is from here, okay? I think Nesserin was technically born in the northern continent, but her family was from here, and she has like an aunt and uncle that live in the city still. Back to my baby boy Dorian, the new king of Adarlan. He's been coming to terms with the fact that his dad was a Valg demon who procreated with his mom twice. So Dorian and his brother Holland are like half Valg basically. So that's what's wrong with Holland. Remember how crazy feral he is? That's what's wrong with him. Somehow Dorian came out nice and sweet. I don't know. Also has severe PTSD because the memories are coming back and they're starting to make sense. So he knows that he's the one that tortured and kills men. And that's really hard for him because he was friends with them too. And they didn't know that something was wrong with him, so they just thought he was killing them. Terrible. He wakes up when the witches arrive to attack the city, and he ends up partially trapped in his tower using his magic to fight off Iskra's coven. So it's not the 13. We get a quick side note of Manon showing up to the city with the attack already happening, and she's livid because she's like, hello, I'm in charge. Iskra, why did you attack without me? Secretly though, she's just worried about Dorian. He is actually doing really well though, okay? He uses his magic to like blender crush a dozen or so witches, just like mist them in the air. His guards are like, oh my god, who knew he could do that? Holy crap. So he's out now. Everybody knows he has magic, but he's not trained. So unfortunately, he ends up like basically experiencing burnout. His magic's complicated because it's really old and there's a lot of it in him, so it's hard for him to use too much of it and get sick, but he doesn't have control. So he uses too much of it too quickly and he's like, whoa, I'm gonna pass out. This isn't good. He gets cornered by one of Iskra's sentinels. And then Manon shows up and kills that girl and tells him to get up and run. She hauls him up to his feet and takes a minute to be like, oh wow, his thighs are so muscular. Look how tall he is. He's got such pretty eyes. He was not this strong the last time I saw him. Girl, me too. You're in the middle of a battle. That man's beautiful. I understand. And you know what? You know what? He matches that energy because he is woozy as all hell. He is falling down. His city is being destroyed all around him. And he looks down at her and he's like, hello, witchling. Baby boy, you're in danger. You're in such danger. Her iron teeth are down. Her claws are out. And he's just like, meow. I can't with him. He's impossible. She tells him to flee, but also reminds him that now he owes her a life debt. So she is absolutely switching sides. Rowan shows up in the stairwell and sees her with Dorian, and he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And without warning or saying anything, he just takes the breath from her lungs with his like wind powers. She starts choking to death, and Dorian's like, stop! Rowan immediately stops. Dorian looks back at Manon and is like, come and find me when you've changed your mind. Help. Get married right now, both of you. The castle and city are left to ruin. Everybody dies. It's really bad, okay? But Dorian and Rowan get out and escape. Tower of Dawn Palace. Things are not going very well. One of the siblings actually committed suicide. So the family's like dealing with that. There's a lot of grief. They're all in mourning. And Nesserin is like, oh, dear God, we showed up here asking for help and we didn't even think to figure out why the palace was draped in white. Oh my God, oh no. So she tells Kale, be quiet, zip it. The king said no. He refused Aelin's gifts. We don't need to ask him anything else. Silence. And Kale's like, yes, all right, you got it. No problem. Kale is, however, given permission to see a healer. So Urys is like, no problem. You can stay in my palace with me as a guest. I'll get the healer brought over to you. We'll have her come here. You don't have to travel. No problem. 3 and 3 siblings, and I think Kashin is the youngest brother, and he's really sweet. And he tells Kale that he's seen people with similar injuries, like, because he's a fighter. He's seen people like that get hurt and be healed by the people in the Tor, which is the magical academy place. So he's like, you're gonna be fine here. Don't worry. And Kale's like, oh, thank God. Wonderful news. Then one of my favorite siblings, Sartok. He's not the oldest. The oldest brother sucks, okay? Sartok's the middle brother, and he's incredible. He catches Nesserin's eye in the throne room. He's a great fighter, just like her, except Kashin works with like the fighters on horses. Like that's the cavalry that he works with. And Sartok is a ruck rider, which are like these giant eagles that they fly into battle. Stop it right now. They also get told that Rifthold has been sacked and they don't have any news about Dorian, but it looks like he got out. So that's bad all around. Kale's freaking out about Dorian and like how he must feel and what happened. And Nesrin has family in the city. Like her parents and siblings are there. So it's a nightmare. That night, Kashin secretly visits with Kale yet again. And he tells him that he thinks his youngest sister was actually murdered. Never forget that Miss Elodie is a star, all right? Don't ever forget that. She is fully aware that she's being tracked. She can't get away from Lorcan though, and she's starting to exhaust herself trying to run from him. They end up running into each other because they get attacked by creatures from Arath. They get separated again. He kills one because he gets lucky. They're like scary creatures, okay? Like the experiments are experimenting and it's getting real bad. He's able to do it, and he's like a 500-year-old ancient demi-fae dude, okay? And he struggles. Elodie over here is a human girl, and she's very small. We get reminded of that. The height difference between them is like 2 feet or something. It's insane. She kills it because she's smart, and she outsmarts the damn thing and kills it. They get back together, and he's like, oh my God, you're so fascinating. How did you do that? She's like, I don't know, but we need to keep running, and she's hurt. She can't run anymore. So he just picks her up like a bag of flour, and they take off through the forest. She tells him she ran away from Arath, and that's why she smells like the witches, but also that's why they're chasing her, because they're trying to bring her back. She also lies and tells him that her name is Marion, which is her mother's name. He swears to protect her and help her get to Terrasen if she will tell him the truth and like the secrets of Marath. Back in Tower of Dawn, our bestie Yrene is back. She did make it to the Southern Continent because of what Aelin did for her. She did become an amazing healer, and she's so good at it that she's basically like the heir apparent to the healer on high. The current healer on high is Hafiza, and she is an icon, a legend. She's incredible. There are several moments where she is suspicious as all heck, okay? I was reading it and I was like, this lady's evil. This lady's in on it. This lady is crazy. She's not. And I'm going to tell you that now because sometimes I'm going to tell you things and you're going to be like, oh, Hephaestia is doing it. She's not. She's a good, sweet lady. Don't doubt her the way that I did. Yrene is very much against Adarlan and the Empire, which we already kind of knew from Assassin's Blade. We get a little more info now, which is that her mother was killed protecting her. So she's planning on, now that she's a healer and magic has returned to the Northern Continent, she's gonna go home and help on the battlefield and stop the king. Hephaestia, though, wants her to stay and take over as healer on high because she knows that she's the best one for the job, and she is the one that's chosen to go to the palace and heal Kale. Hephaestia is basically teaching her a lesson by asking her to heal him because, you know, like the doctor code where it's like you have to heal no matter what, like no judgments to the person, that's your job, that's what you're supposed to do. She's reminding Yrene of that. And she's like, if you want to be a master healer, you have to be able to put these feelings aside and do your job. So go fix Kale, he needs help. However, when Yrene goes to meet with him for the first day, she's late and she's so unbelievably rude. Like, we're in her head and Kale's head for POVs. He's like, dang, what did I do? Do I stink? Like, what's going on with this lady? And she's like, I've never been so mean to a patient before, but I can't help myself. She like can't even look at him. Like, she's so annoyed that she's like breathing the same air he's breathing. During their interview process, he realizes she's from Finharrow and he's like, oh, I get it now. I understand. This is the worst. I'm sorry for your loss. Oh God. So Yrene looks over his injury, even though she like can barely stomach touching him, and she realizes it was caused by like super dark magic that she's never messed with before. Her magic doesn't even like being close to it. She's not sure she'll be able to do anything, but she's gonna go research and talk to Hephaestia and try to decide. When she leaves, Kale is like, we ain't seeing her again. I'm never gonna get out of this chair. She is not gonna help me. Urine is super embarrassed by her behavior, and when she goes to Hephaestus, she's honest about what happened. Hephaestus is like, all you can do is be better next time. Urine is also struggling because Cale is clearly different. Like, he's not like the guards that she knew or the men that she knew. He doesn't feel like he belonged to the bad empire, but he did. So she's like, how do I reconcile those feelings? She does end up, though, agreeing to help him, but she's like, I have no idea where to even start. So she starts researching because the dark magic is like so powerful. She knows it's gonna be tricky. Our boy Sartok is getting friendly with Nesrin. She's going out to see her family in the city, and he's like, oh, no problem, let me escort you. She refuses, which is wild, and he's like, are you sure? The city's a maze, like, you could get lost. And she's like, no, I'll be fine, no big deal. Girl, that is a prince. You let him walk you to your aunt and uncle's house. Are you joking right now? Remember when I told you that she looked at him and was like, oh my God, that's Sartok, the famous Ruck Rider? He knows all about her too. They've been hearing stories about each other for years. I can't. We find out from him that Kashin is interested in Urine, but Urine's not really interested in him, so like they're just friends, but it's complicated. He also tells her that if she's interested, he'd be happy to fly her around on his ruck anytime. I was like, oh my God, girl, she's stronger than me. She's stronger than me. Back in Rifthold, after the witches have like sacked the city, Manon and Iskra get into a fight. Because of the way their sense of smell works, Iskra can tell that Manon killed her witches. So now Manon is labeled a liar and a witch killer because Iskra doesn't believe her that like Dorian got away because Rowan came in and attacked and Manon couldn't fight all of them off. Iskra goes running off to Marath first to go tell the grandmother her version of events, and Manon is with the 13, and she's like, this is gonna be really bad. And the 13 are like, even if it is, we stand with you. Manon gives them the message to run if anything goes down against her or if they're in danger. She just wants them to flee. They go back to Marath, and the matrons are livid, specifically her grandma, the Blackbeak matron. Y'all remember Petra though? The heir for the Blue Bloods? She's on Manon's side, and she like quietly with her eyes is like, be careful. They also have a sweet moment where she asks Manon why she saved her life, and Manon is like, well, your wyvern Keely fought for you, and I didn't want her final moments to be in vain. Like, she was a warrior, and she deserved help just like anyone else in my covens. And Petra looks at her and goes, you remember her name? End me now. But Manon still gets in trouble because her grandma is evil and she can see that like Manon's slipping and her control on Manon is slipping and she's afraid of her. So she says that blood is owed blood. So to make up for Iskra's sentinels that were killed by Manon, they're gonna kill Manon's second in command, her cousin Asterin. Cale, back at the palace, goes to the oldest brother, who's basically like the Azriel of this storyline, okay? He's like the spy master, he knows everything, but unlike Azriel, he's smug and talkative and obnoxious. He refuses any help and like talks down to Cale because Cale's in a wheelchair. It's just very uncomfortable. He's an ass, okay? I don't like him at all. I'm not even gonna tell you his name. You don't even need to know it. It's not important. At dinner that night, Nesrin doesn't come home because she's still in the city with her family. But Urine shows up and joins them. Kashin makes it clear that he is interested in Urine. And he gives Cale the treatment of like, back off or I'll make you back off. I'm the nice brother, but I still know how to fight. And Cale's like, broski, I have a girlfriend. I'm dating Nesrin, kind of. I'm not interested, don't worry. Nesrin does come home, but she comes home super late, and Cale is like, do you have any idea how worried I was about you? You were in a foreign city, anything could have happened. And this is the first like crack in their relationship because Nesrin is like, excuse you, this is not a foreign city for me, this is my homeland. She's not afraid of it the way that he is, and she wishes that he could just calm down and trust these people because they're her people. But he just doesn't understand, so she storms off and goes to bed without him. Aelin, Adian, and Lysandra make a stop at a coastal city called Ilium, which is where there's a special temple dedicated to Brannon. That's why she says she wanted to come. We know that the little folk made her like a little perfect replica of Brannon's temple back when she was still in Terrasen with the Lords. So she knew that's where she needed to go, but she's still kind of keeping some secrets from the gang. She doesn't tell them everything. Also, Ilium's been taken over by Adarlan, so they're gonna have to fight the guards and possibly some Valg in order to get into the temple. Dorian and Rowan are on a road trip from hell, trying to get back to Aelin. They bond, though, over Sorsha's death and Rowan's mate's death and how they wish they'd been stronger and they could have protected them. Rowan also agrees to give him some magical training so that Dorian won't experience burnout again, or at least will know what to do. This is also the iconic moment where Dorian's like, when you first met Aelin, did you know? And Rowan goes, no. Gods, no. Yrene comes back to the palace and tells Chaol that she's gonna help him, but also he needs to be careful with what he says because the servants talk and everybody's paying everybody off to pass around secrets, because remember, the siblings are gonna have to fight to the death to figure out who gets to be the true heir and the next ruler. So they don't trust each other and there's constant scheming going on behind the scenes. You can't trust anybody. They discuss the differences between the northern and southern continents while she's working and how much happier she is in this place with magic and people that are kind. He says that he knows how bad the Empire was, okay? And he sees the dangers and the horrors that the king inflicted on everybody, but he is trying to make a new path and be a new man and do the right things, and he still doesn't really know where he stands, but he's working on it. So tensions are high, but they're also sort of reaching an understanding. I'm gonna try to describe to you the way the injury is talked about. Basically, there's a scar on his back, a weird splotchy black scar on his back. When she touches it and uses her magic to go in the wound, the dark magic is sitting there in a knot on his spine, and it fights back. So her magic is light magic. All the healing magic looks like that. So it's literally light versus dark warring on his back, and it feels awful and alien to her. When she touches it, she's I don't know what that is, but I don't like it. At dinner, Chaol works up the nerve to ask Uris for a private meeting, but he says that right now his most important priority is making sure his wife is working through her grief, and he does not have time to meet with Chaol. So Chaol decides to use Nesserin to get close to Sartok because it's clear that he's softer to her. And Chaol's go ahead, get the info we need, because I'm not getting it. You go be a girl and flirt with him and get what we need. Chaol, that's your girlfriend. Idiot boy. Yrene goes up into the libraries of the Tor, which is shockingly similar to the libraries in Akatar. Okay, you know, Rhys's big library where all the priestesses work, and it's layers. That's how this is set up too. Yrene finds some suspicious scrolls and books about the Vogue in the library. She gets the sense that she's being watched, and she takes off kind of casually running, trying to escape whatever's following her. She finds a dead body, and the girl that's dead looks like Yrene, similar hair, similar build, similar clothes. That's not good, but she's able to get out. The body though of that dead girl is a husk. So it was definitely a Vogue. It's just like what Aelin and Rowan were finding in the woods in the last book. At the temple in Ilium, Aelin, Adian, and Lysandra attack the guards. Aelin does this amazing thing where she warns them to stand down. When they say no, she goes, okay, have it your way. And she just blows on one of the guards, and Voldemort deaths him. She burns him from the inside out, and he turns to ash and he blows away in the wind. Oh my God. They take it back in 20 minutes, and then inside the temple, she meets with Brannon's ghost. She asks him how to kill Maeve, but he says he doesn't know. He tells her to find the lock in the stone marshes and put the keys back in the door and destroy them forever. Adian listens in on the conversation and reminds her that she has to try to do better about including them in her plans, even though it's hard for her to trust. They get attacked by guards from the salt mines. She faces them, and it's actually Erewhon like talking through the main guy to scare her. He tells them that they know Dorian got away and they know Rowan's with him, and Marath people are tracking them right now. She burns the bodies, and Erewhon uses like a last connection effort to like lash out at her with dark magic. It hits her in the chest, but like just to the side, and so the Amulet of Arinth doesn't get hit, because if he'd hit that, he would know that she has the word key and they'd be screwed. That's like the last piece of the puzzle. He doesn't know where the third and final word key is. When Yrene goes to see Chaol the next day, she sends the servant on like some random errand that's a lie. She's asking for supplies she doesn't need, just to get her out of the room so she can tell Chaol about the attack at the library. He thinks that the creature must have followed him and Nesrin from the north, and so he apologizes for putting Yrene and the other girls in danger. But it looks like maybe the sister that died was killed by a Vogue. So it was already probably on the southern continent, possibly in the castle. Yrene asks him to help teach self-defense to the girls at the academy, and he says yes. She attempts once again to like really push her magic into the scar on his back, and it works, but it's agony. He says it feels like he's being like shredded from the inside out. She knows that they need to attempt to heal the mental pain that he's going through, but he's like, yeah, we're not doing that. I know what happened to me. I made peace with it. Go ahead and try to get the stuff out of my back again. He puts a bit in his mouth and just like bites on it and screams in agony while she keeps working on him, but it's not working. Meanwhile, Nesrin goes to visit Sartok, and he shows her Kadara, which is his beautiful little eagle rook. I love her. Nesrin is obsessed with flying. She thinks it's amazing, like the coolest thing she's ever done. We find out that Sartok has no interest in being heir. He actually loves his siblings, and he doesn't want anything to happen to them, and he worries about somebody getting picked and hurting all of them. Oh, get prepared. Manon and the 13 arrive to Astrin's execution, and she's already there, like on the floor in front of the three matrons, and she has been beaten. Manon is livid. Astrin's like, don't worry, Manon. I took him like a champ. You should be proud of me. And then she just quietly looks behind Manon and like looks at each of the 13. And Manon's like, oh my God, this is the last time she's gonna look at any of us. So the Blackbeak matron is truly a monster, and she wants more beatings to take place. So she's like, okay, yellow legs, get in a line if you wanna hit Astrin. But Manon refuses and is like, hold on, I invoke the right of execution because Astrin is part of her coven. So it means that they have to listen to her, and she gets to be the one to kill Astrin. Manon's overcome with emotion because she knows that Astrin could give her up and just go ahead and say what really happened, but she refuses. I was already crying when Manon has Sorel turn Astrin around so she can look at the dawn for the last time. But instead of looking, Astrin just looks at Manon and whispers, bring my body back to the cabin. Manon draws her sword, and she realizes in that moment that she was not born soulless or heartless, because both of them were begging her to not do it. All of the 13 quietly give her a two-fingered salute, which is like the salute that you do for a witch queen, not a high queen. So it's like above the matrons. And Manon's like, whoa, we can't be doing that in front of people. Astrin whispers, bring our people home, Manon. And then she does the salute. So Manon goes, run, and then swings the sword on her grandmother. Oh, it's bad. I'm smiling, but it's bad. It's really bad. The grandma wants to do the fight like in the olden ways, so just with their claws and teeth, and she never trained with Manon, so Manon had no idea how good of a fighter her grandma was, but it's brutal. Her grandma drops some lore on us mid-fight, okay? Manon's whole life, she believed that like a true Blackbeak, she tore open her mother's womb and killed her in childbirth because she was just so ready to be out. But actually, Manon's grandma killed her because as she was giving birth to Manon, she admitted that the dad was a rare-born Crocan prince. So Manon is a freaking Iron Teeth and a Crocan. They planned on uniting their people and breaking the curse with Manon as the new queen. So the grandma had to kill her dad too, because he actually loved Manon and he loved her mother, and he went after them and would not stop until the grandma killed him. And then the grandma taught Manon how to hate Crokins and like pumped her full of all that like awful history so that she would just spend her life killing her family members. Y'all remember that witch she killed at the end of the book where she got her new cloak? That was Rhiannon, named after the Crokin Queen from the original war, and she was her half-sister. So it hammers home to Manon that she was not born this way, she was made into this. And also she's like, holy crap, I'm a freaking Crokin Queen, what's going on? While she's fighting to the death with her grandma. She ends up getting like basically gutted, like her grandma gets a good swipe on her stomach, and so Manon rolls off the cliff because they're like up on like a balcony situation. She rolls off and Abraxas catches her. The two fastest flyers from the 13 are called the Shadows. They came to help her escape. They end up getting attacked by a group of 6 from Iskra's personal coven, and they're able to get away. But Manon unfortunately passes out once the Shadows have like left her, so she's alone with Abraxas, dying. Nesrin goes out to hunt the Vogue demons in the city and instead runs into Sartok again, because he is kind of following her a little bit. He offers to help her search, but they don't find anything. After that first healing session, Yrene and Kale are both completely drained. It's gonna be really, really hard to break through the dark magic, especially if he's gonna fight it. Yrene is late the next day, and she's planning on taking Kale with her to the tour. Obviously, he can't be like pushed around the crowded city in his wheelchair. It's just not gonna work. But they have a special brace for him so that he can ride a horse again. And he's a little uncomfortable, like asking for help to get in and out of the saddle, but he loves being able to ride. He also meets one of the guards who only has one hand. And this guy, he didn't even notice. He's just been running about doing all the things he needs to do. And all of a sudden, Kale is like, oh my God, you're like me. And it's like a moment for him. When Yrene gets Kale to the girls in the courtyard, they're so excited for the self-defense class. They also think he's really cute and they're flirting with him and blushing. And he's just like, this is wild. I didn't think people were still gonna treat me like this, but they do, because there's nothing wrong with him being in the wheelchair. He's still Kale. He gets upset with Yrene though, because she basically puts him on display and is like, okay girls, so Captain Westfall can't walk and we need to get him out of the special saddle and into the wheelchair. Who wants to volunteer? And makes it like a class moment where she's teaching them how to like help him and stuff. And it's not good for him because he had no warning it was gonna happen, and he would have said no had he been asked to be a little research subject. When they get back, Kashin is in the courtyard waiting for them, and he tells Yrene not to worry because he sent personal guards over to the tour to keep her safe. Yrene ends up apologizing to Kale because she convinces him to tell her why he's so upset because he's been weird all afternoon. And he's like, girl, you made me feel like an experiment. It wasn't very nice. And she's like, oh, right. You're a human patient with feelings. I forgot. There's a lot of talk about the Southern continent being a little bit more like open about bodies and like sexuality and stuff like that. And for me, I read it as like, she just doesn't think of his injury as being something that should upset him because it doesn't upset her. So she's not even seeing it as like something that he's sensitive about, but he's really sensitive about it. And so once she's confronted with that, she's like, oh, right. You're upset, I understand. They have another scary healing session. Something new that starts happening is Kale's memories like get sent to Yrene almost like through a bond of her magic. Like while she's fighting the darkness, little memories shoot through. She sees his dad and how abusive he was. Kale has a scar from being kicked down the stairs at like 14 years old when he left home to go live with Dorian. She also sees Marath, so she's starting to like put the pieces together about the darkness and the army. She gets sick from working so hard and has like a little 11 moment where her nose bleeds, but Kale's toes start to wiggle. Elodie and Lorcan are still together. They've realized that they need to join up with a group so that they can travel safely because there's toll roads that they need to pass and they don't have any money. He wants to pretend to be her brother, and she's like, absolutely not, you need to be my husband, okay? Men are not afraid of brothers, but they will not touch me if they think that I'm yours. And Lorcan is like, I'm sorry, have people done that to you? before? Because I'll kill them. And she has to be like, whoop, knock it off. So they join up with like basically a traveling circus so that they can join their group and then get across the tolls. Lorcan's starting to become stupid impressed by her, by the way, because she's so smart and clever. He also starts bracing her injury with his magic so that she doesn't limp anymore. Nesterin again goes out to visit her aunt and uncle, and this time we get to see her with them, and they are so sweet. They love her, and they're just like teasing her and talking to her. It's just like the most cozy. We don't get to see a lot of the kids with their families because so many of them are like war-torn and they don't have those relationships anymore, or if they do, their parents suck. But this is like a sweet aunt and uncle and her cousins, and it's just, oh, it's adorable. Also, rumors have been flying about her hanging out with Sartok, and that is a huge deal because, as I have said many times, he's a prince and he's the people's favorite. So they're all like, ooh, girl, get your man. And she's like, I came here with Captain Westfall. And they're like, did you though? Rowan and Dorian get to Skulls Bay first and go straight to Captain Rolfe. He tells them about how Marath is hunting them and some of his men are being captured and brought back changed, and they have the scary rings on their fingers. Also, Holland, Dorian's little feral brother, has been named heir to DP and the Crown Prince. Rowan decides to be honest with Rolfe since they're trying to win him over, so he tells them the truth about Marath and what's going on. Rolfe won't give them an answer when Rowan asks him to join them and help them, and instead he calls over two of his new men that are working for him, and it's Gavriel and Fenris. They are not nice to Dorian and Rowan. Things are tense between these guys. Obviously, they're still bloodsworn to Maeve, and they confirm what we were all worried about, which is that Maeve sent some of her navy over to attack Ellaway. But they don't want to talk until Aelin shows up. They want to hear things from her or not at all. We learn in this moment that Fenris only ever agreed to work for Maeve and be bloodsworn to her because his twin brother Connell got like roped into working with Maeve, and she made him be her little sex slave, and Connell didn't like it, so Fenris was like, absolutely not. I'll join you and I'll do it since we're twins, so if you like him, I look just like him, and that'll be fine. So he was only ever trying to keep his brother safe, and I just, oh, it hurts. Gavriel and Fenris have come over to Skulls Bay because they're hunting Lorcan, because Lorcan went against Maeve, and they now need to kill him. Rowan convinces them to help in the battle with Erewhon because Lorcan's gonna show up at some point because he's also looking for Aelin, so then they can fight him. Rowan's like, I really don't care what happens here, okay? I just want Aelin to be queen again, and then I'll kill Lorcan with you, no problem. I don't like that guy. He also tells Gavriel that if he doesn't help in the war, he's dooming his son to die, and Gavriel's like, my what now? Because like we thought, he had no idea he had a child. Back to Tower of Dawn. One of the princesses, the one that everybody kind of describes as like the bratty one, I don't love that. She's the Azula of this family, okay? She knows what she wants and she goes for it. She's a boss bitch, but also she's just kind of a bitch. Sometimes she's just mean for fun. And she wants Yrene to get information about Aelin out of Kael. She's kind to Yrene and like they're friends, but also there's this sense that like if she gets bored with her, she'll just get rid of her because that's what she does. Hassar thinks that the attacks in the library were to get them to agree to the war, and Yrene is like, no girl, they were not. She can't say this out loud because she can't disagree with her or else she'll get kicked out. But in her head, she's like, there's no way he would do that. He would never hurt innocents. Yrene only agrees to spy for her because Hassar is basically like, you remember how you told me you wanted to go home? It'd be such a shame if you couldn't find passage on a ship since I control all the ships. When Yrene doesn't come to see Kael the next day, he goes over to the tour himself and ends up meeting with Hephaestia. She tells him Yrene is just recovering and it's normal, like her healing magic has to recoup because she's doing so much to help him. She sleeps for a day and a half, people, and then the next day she goes to Kael. She finds him waiting in the courtyard again. They're starting to lightly care about each other, which is really cute. She has some things to do around the city, and he's like, why don't you take a break from healing me and I'll go with you? And so he wants to explore. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. And they spend the afternoon like going around to the different patients she needs to see, and he gets to watch her work, and it's really fun for him. He has a great time. And then, woof, we get to the party scene. At dinner, Hussar forces Urine to sit beside Kale and like kicks Nesserin out of her seat. She literally like walks over to her and is like, move. And it's awkward, and Nesserin's like, oh, where do I go though? And Sartok is like, come sit with me. I can talk to you about stuff down here with my brothers. And so she goes and sits with Sartok, thank God. Dinner devolves into a party where they all end up kind of having like a weird dance orgy sprinkled around the room. There's like couches and alcoves, and it's a lot. Kale is like, what is going on? And Urina's like, I told you things get crazy here. There's like opium-laced incense in the air. It's a lot, okay? Nesrin and Sartok are like, boop, and they go outside, out of the smoke, okay? So they're just chilling on the balcony, talking to each other, being cute. Urine and Kale are like, let's sit on a couch quietly, because Kashin tries to take her away to get her on a couch, and Kale's like, no, I will not be letting you do that, sir. And he steps in and like grabs her and is like, I want to sit with her on a couch. Screw off, Prince Boy. And so Kashin is fuming over in the corner. Things get flirty on the couch. Okay, this is one of the only times where I was like, do I understand people being attracted to Kale? I think I get it. There's just something about the way every once in a while he has such a good one-liner. I'm like, bro, where did that come from? Dorian's been training you. Does he just write you little notes and tell you what to say? Oh my God. She ends up not being able to lie to him though, so she tells him that Hussar wants her to find out where Elaine might be going. And she's like, just tell me anything, like anything I can give her. It doesn't have to be true. Tell me something. And so he's like, Skulls Bay. She would never go to Skulls Bay because all he knows is her and Sam blew it up that one time and the Pirate King doesn't like them. So that's not good because that's exactly where they are. Nesserin sees Urine and Kale and is very hurt by this, and she tells him that she's actually kind of tempted to take Sartok up on his offer and go out to the desert with him and meet the Ruck Riders. Kale feels terrible and he like babbles and is like, no, it wasn't real, like of course not, I came here with you and blah blah blah. And they end up in bed together, but they just talk, and the whole time Kale says when he looks at Nesserin, it feels like she's just saying, I know, I saw, I know. So things are not good with the two of them. Manon wakes up in the forest with Abraxas looking after her, and she is so hurt. Like her wounds are healing, but it's not going well. He put them near a stream, so she drags herself over to the water and makes him stay back in the little clearing. She gets to the water, she drinks, and then a creature lands in front of her. It's really bad, okay? They're called bloodhounds. They're like human Valg things, and they like tracked her by scent, and it's got wings, like it flies, and it can talk. It's just nightmare fuel. She manages to get away from it and get back to Abraxas, but she's hurt again because while she's running and stuff, she pulls all of her wounds, and so they're open again. She tells Abraxas, get to the coast, somewhere safe, and then passes out again. The next morning, Urine comes to help Kale and finds him in bed with Nesserin and panics. It's so complicated. Kale like rushes after her and is like, no, nothing happened. And then Urine is like, oh, nothing happened. And she feels guilty about hoping that nothing happened, and he feels guilty about feeling like he needed to tell her that nothing happened, and Nesserin's just in bed. Like, I'm supposed to be his girlfriend. This is ridiculous. She brought some research over to the palace about the word marks and the Valg and stuff, and he's like, whoa girl, that is not safe here, and he makes her hide it immediately, so she puts it in a pair of his boots. She learned in the library that there were 2 other Valg kings, so there's Erewhon and then Orcus and Mantix. They were either killed or sent away, so they shouldn't have to worry about them. They have another healing session where he opens up to her and shows her more scenes of his abuse from his dad, and she covers over those memories with like nicer ones of her and her mom. At the end of it, he's able to move his entire foot. Nesserin is confused about how she should feel about the Urine and Kale situation, because on one hand, like, yes, they were back together, and at the end of the last book, she thought like, woo, we are back together, this is great. But like, was it just the trauma? Should they have just stayed friends? Nothing's really happened aside from like a couple kisses because he's been so uncomfortable around her since he got injured. So like, it's just been very complicated. Sartog catches her up with Kadara and he's like, I'm about to go away for a couple weeks to go see my people over in the desert. You want to come? We could go together. They would love to meet you. She agrees, y'all. She doesn't even go tell Kale or ask his permission or anything. She just freaking writes him a note like, going with Sartog, we'll be gone several weeks, bye-bye, and just flies off with him. And listen, Sartog is literally like twirling his hair and kicking his little feet and giggling over the fact that she said yes. Like, he is just so smitten and it's so cute. In Skulls Bay, Dorian is now training with Rowan, but they're getting really impatient waiting for Aelin to show up and waiting for Rolf to make a decision. So they do this little like sneaky thing where Dorian makes it look like they like send an important letter because he's the king. So he like fancy writes a letter and seals it and sends it off. So then Rolf is like, oh my god, they must be planning something. And he agrees to have a meeting with them immediately because he doesn't want to be left out. But when Dorian and Rowan go up with Rolf to his office, Aelin is already inside. Obviously, Rolf only knows her as Selena, so he's like, what are you doing here? Get out of my office. Rowan is like, whoa, 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 what's the procedure? What do we do? Because he knows Aelin, but he's not supposed to know Selena, so he's like, do we not know each? Okay, cool. And he just stands completely still because he's like, if I move, I'm gonna touch her. And if I touch her, I'm gonna kiss her. And then Rolf's gonna be even more confused. She flirts with him like shamelessly. She's like, I don't know you, do I? I'd like to. And he's like, sorry, I'm taken. And she's like, wow, she must be a strong, powerful woman to get you interested. And he's like, she is. And Dorian's just standing there like, I want to die. Rolf orders Fenris and Gabriel to kill her, but then she goes, hold on, don't you want to meet Aelin? And another Aelin like walks into the office and Rowan and Dorian are like, what's going on? That's actually Lysandra, okay? So she turns back into herself and then everybody has a moment of being like, a shapeshifter, and it's panic. Aelin was in the office the entire time, so she was in the black assassin's clothes, okay? So Rowan is like, I knew that was you, baby. It's so cute. Aelin tells Rolf that if he agrees to fight with her and help them win the war, she will make him Pirate King. But he's so mad about what she did before with Sam that he's like, no, girl, get out of my office. Gabriel confronts them and wants to know where Adian is, but Aelin's like, no. You don't get to decide when and where you meet him. You don't even get to decide if you get to call him your son. The gang gets together and they swap information because they've been apart for so long. Aelin basically thinks that they need Rolf because he has that special map on his hands that like tells him the sea and shows him like enemies and stuff. So they have to convince him to work with them one way or another. In order to test the theory about the map working, they decide to put the Amulet of Arenth on Lysandra, have her disguise herself as another woman, and go down into an alley with Adian to like pretend hook up. And then if somebody comes looking for them in this random alley, they'll know, oh, okay, there's treasure there. And they knew there was treasure there because Rolf used his map and sent somebody after it. It makes Adian wildly uncomfortable because he doesn't like looking at Lysandra this way and like using her body in this way because he knows what she's been through. And so he has this whole thing where he's like, I genuinely want to be with her and like her a lot, but I'm not even gonna attempt anything because it's gonna be forever until she looks at another man. Like, I'm just gonna wait my turn and maybe when she's ready, she'll want me. I hope, fingers crossed. Lysandra is super kind to Adian about his nerves over like meeting Gabriel and stuff. She tells him it's normal and he has nothing to be ashamed about or worried about. Like, he'll get through it and they'll be with him when he does. And he goes, speaking of, would you actually please come with me? I'd like you to be there when I meet him. I'm scared. The plan does work though, and Rolf's barmaid comes and like wanders into the alley and then leaves quickly when she realizes like what's happening and there's no treasure. Kale and Yrene are getting closer and closer. He ends up staying really late at the tour doing research with her, and it's so late that like he can't travel back across the city, so he sends a note to Nesrin telling her that he's not going to be home and like where he is, and then he sleeps in another room at the tour. The next day when he goes home, that note has been like returned to him along with Nesrin Nesrin's note saying goodbye, and he feels like the scum of the earth because he's like, I upset her so badly that she left with another guy. Meanwhile, Nesrin and Sartok are traveling together, having a great time. Okay, there's a storm, it's cold. They have to kind of cuddle a little bit, but he is so sweet, and Kadara is so sweet, and he's telling her stories and teaching her about his history, which is also her history, and it's incredible. She's having a great time. When Yrene comes to see Kale the next day, she's surprised because he's all cranky and awful again, and she thought things were better now. She ends up learning from Hisar that Nesrin went with Sartok, so she goes running back to Kale to be like, I found out what happened. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. But on her way to his rooms, something chases her through the palace, and she barely makes it back to him, and then they have to like barricade themselves. I think possibly in Nesrin's room. The rooms are like connected to each other, and the thing like chases them inside, and then they end up like backed into a corner in a secondary room. She has a massive panic attack, and Kale has to like talk her through it, and he's like, whatever comes through that door, we're gonna handle it together. We're gonna be okay together. And she like calms down and gets herself centered. But then Kashin arrives and saves them. However, when he opens the door and lets them out, the creature's gone, so the room's destroyed, so clearly something chased them, but the creature's gone. Yrene says she feels safest with Kale, so she ends up sleeping in his bed, and he sits up in his chair all night facing the door, keeping watch. The next morning, Kale is like, I gotta be stronger for my girl. The next morning, Kale is like, I gotta get it together. I gotta get stronger. And so he goes down to the castle guards and is like, can I train with you guys? I wanna learn everything you know. And they're like, heck yeah, man, let's do it. Elodie and Lorcan are now traveling with those performers. She tells him some bits about Marath, and he lies and says that Selena works for Aelin. This hurts and confuses her so much that she sort of shuts down and is just like, what am I gonna offer my queen? Like, I'm not good enough. And she just feels terrible. And Lorcan doesn't push her. He just ends up being like, you will tell me what you know once you are better. They have to share a tent when they stop to camp since they're newlyweds. He's nervous about being around her, like in a sleeping situation or like changing clothes or anything, because she is a child, okay? I think she's like 18 or 19 years old. She's little. And he is like over 500. But at least he's self-aware, because normally they're like, I don't care. I like a human girl. At least he's like, I care a lot, actually, and I don't think we should be alone together because I don't want to do anything to make you uncomfortable. And you should be uncomfortable with me because I'm very old. He does end up like offering to wash her clothes while she takes a bath, and he like guards the tent to keep her safe. He hears her hide the word key necklace under her bedroll, and he's like, what is she keeping from me? But he doesn't want to take it from her because she's had so much taken from her. And he's like, I can't do that. Like, I'm gonna have to just let her trust me, and hopefully she'll tell me the truth. We stan a complicated king. He doesn't know what he's doing half the time, but he knows he's not gonna hurt Elodie. In exchange for his help with the bath and the clothes, she gives him a little bit more information and tells him about Vernon and how he like tortured her at Marath. He's like, girl, you want me to kill that guy for you? She asks what it will cost, and he's like, nothing, I'll do it for free. And you know what, I'll enjoy it. She tells him about the breeding experiments too, and he's like, so the explosion was not an accident. She's like, no sir, it was not. She also slips and mentions that not only did Vernon injure her ankle, he kept her chained up. And Lorcan's like, what chain? And she's like, ooh, we don't have time to unpack all of that. Let's go to bed. Sartok gives Nesrin a little bit more information about the desert clans and how they operate. There's like several of them kind of spread out, and he explains that he's not a prince amongst them, even though these are people from the southern continent. These are technically like in his little empire. He's not a prince. He's just a captain. He's just a warrior. He's just a man. They arrive at the mountain home of his particular clan, and we meet his hearth sister, Bort. These are relationships that are like by choice, not by blood. It's so cute. She is adorable. She's a little menace. Aelin would love her. Bort is super impressed by Nesserin and how good she is at archery, and she wants her to teach her. We see Falcon, the freaking spider silk merchant. He's out in the mountains because remember, he's hunting those spiders. He wants to get those 20 years of his life back. Sartok was planning on meeting with his hearth mother, Halun, but she wasn't there, so they kind of had to wait it out a little bit. She arrives, and he's like, yes, Nesserin, I can't wait for you to meet her. It's very important to me that you guys get along and like each other for reasons that we don't need to get into right now. He's got things that he wants to tell Halun in private, but she's like, buddy, they're gonna have to wait. I'm exhausted. And also, there's darkness growing in the mountains. I think it's those dang spiders. We need to handle it before it gets worse. Nesserin confirms her suspicions that there is a darkness growing and war is coming, and Sartok explains that his father is just so clouded by grief that he's not paying attention to it. Falcon confirms that the spiders are real, and so Halun is like, okay, wonderful, I need you guys to go after them and kill them for us. They settle in for the night because there's a storm coming, and Halun tells stories because she's their people's story keeper. She tells them about the past, when there was a rip in the world and creatures came through. So she's talking about the first war and the Vogue coming and how they attacked the Fae. Aelin and Rowan meet again with Gavriel and Fenris. The boys kind of explain that like Maeve's definitely planning something, but Aelin and Rowan obviously can't trust them because even though they don't like Maeve and they don't want to work for her, they're bloodsworn, so they can't get out of it without her releasing them. Kale and Yrene go to the library again because they're starting to realize that somebody put that information about the word marks in the Vogue for her to find specifically. The head librarian doesn't know. She's like, those books aren't here anymore. I'm not sure how they got here. Maybe somebody brought them over from the Oasis, which is like this special little spot that's private for the royals. But Yrene knows that maybe if she asks politely, Hussar could take her. They also have dinner together in this chapter. They like go out on like kind of a date basically, but they're still just friends. Nothing's happened other than like some flirting and some extended eye contact. But they just enjoy being themselves and they feel really comfortable with each other. Adian goes with Lysandra to meet Gavriel for the first time. Gavriel is really nervous himself and like very kind. But Adian is just like smacked in the face with all this grief over like his life and his mother's life and how she was treated, because Adian was basically like a bastard child. So nobody knew who his dad was and she wouldn't tell anybody. So it led to like her being like ostracized and bullied, but he was taken in by Aelin's family and like taken care of. It does not go well, needless to say. They end up leaving. And Lysandra is like, it's okay, like don't feel bad, like you're allowed to feel how you feel, it's gonna be fine. And he is just like distraught because he's like, oh my god, I ruined it, they're never gonna work with us now, Aelin's gonna be so mad at me, And Lysandra's like, bestie babes, no, she'll never be mad at you, we'll never be mad at you. And also, you couldn't see how Gavriel was looking at you, okay? He's gonna do everything in his power to make it up to you. You just need to relax. Aelin learns from Rolf that the fleet from Maeve is planning to attack Elaway. Nesserin and Sartok fly to the watchtower to look for the spiders. They enter the tower together. Kadara is too big, so she has to like wait outside on the roof. They quickly discover that it is heavily booby-trapped, okay? It's really bad. There's this incredible moment though where she like steps on a step and the step drops into a pit and he has to like grab her and pull her into his chest, but also they're on a staircase, so he's like falling backwards onto the stairs and holding her. It's everything to me. They maneuver through the traps and slowly but surely get to the bottom of the tower. They see writing on the wall, but they can't like make out what it says. And then from above them, they hear, it says, look up. Pity no one can ever read it. It's a freaking spider the size of a horse on the ceiling coming down to attack them. So they're dead, man. Like they're dead. And then a giant wolf comes running into the room and attacks the spider. They like topple outside and then Kadara gets involved and kills the spider. Falcon is the wolf. He's a shapeshifter. That's gonna come back to haunt us in the best way possible. Don't kill me, but that's where we're gonna stop. When we come back, We have chapters 33 of 51 of Empire of Storms, like basically the end of the book, okay? And I didn't want to leave you on a cliffhanger anywhere in that because it's about to get really bad. You'd be so much more mad at me, okay, if we'd moved on. So just start talking Nesrin are fine and Falcon's a shapeshifter. Stop there. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, don't forget to like the video and comment down below. I love talking to you guys. How are y'all feeling about the amount of characters now? Like, I'm kind of glad she split the books because we get to meet so many new people, but also there's so many new people. And when you're reading it in the tandem read, it's overwhelming, like in the best way. So I hope you guys are enjoying. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you so soon. Have a good one. Bye.